this is the end result, right? Like if you do just believe in yourself, if you apply the peel fallacy and just blindly believe in yourself with no attribution to reality and just assume that anything you want is going to happen and you are enabled by the world around you, this is the end result. Is just absolute absurdity, ridiculousness. So in last chapter, we talked about how confidence is built through accumulating evidence, and that evidence that's accumulated, it must be tethered or mapping to reality. But the complication is that often our understanding of reality is relative based on what the people around us see as reality. Florence Foster Jenkins thought she could sing largely because the people around her continued to let her think she could sing. And so she developed a delusional level of confidence around this one area of life that she was actually fucking terrible at. And this is where we get into trouble, when we are completely miscalibrated towards our actual competence in a specific domain. When we think we are excellent at something, but we're actually terrible at it. Or when we think we're terrible at something, but we're actually excellent. Both of these traps crop up time and time again. We all succumb to them. We all get tricked by them. And we all tend to make the same mistake over and over again. If we drastically overestimate our abilities, we will become delusional and narcissistic and completely untethered to reality. And not only will this cause us to fail, but it will cause us to fail in some of the most embarrassing and catastrophic ways. And then if we drastically underestimate our own abilities, then we prevent ourselves from taking action. We hold ourselves back and prevent ourselves from being able to succeed as much as we potentially could. And so it turns out that there's actually a number of mechanisms in our minds that can get out of whack or lose an accurate reading on where our own abilities and our own competence lies. We easily succumb to either overestimating or underestimating ourselves in certain domains. And when we overestimate or underestimate ourselves, our confidence works against us rather than for us.
Okay, so the most common of these is the Dunning-Kruger effect. And a lot of people have probably heard of this one, right? And it's what Florence fell victim to here. This is when somebody who's really incompetent thinks they're actually competent, or like a stupid person thinks they're really smart, or an incapable person thinks they're capable with something, right? A lot of times too, it's when capable people don't realize how capable they are. They think they're incapable or stupid or whatever it is, right? Okay, so there were two researchers who figured this out back in the 90s, Dunning and Kruger. That's why it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? And what they did is they had this study where they brought students in and they gave them all sorts of different tests on like logic and grammar and humor. Before they gave them their scores, they had them rate themselves. What they found was pretty interesting is that people who scored low on these different tests, like the bottom 25%, they thought they actually scored in like the top 30%, 30 or 40%, right? They overestimated their ability by that on all these different tests. Some of the people who scored higher too thought they scored lower and all that. But the main finding is that incompetent people think they're way more competent than they are.
Right.
Dumb people think they're smarter than they actually are. The conclusion they came to out of this was that the skills you need to do a task are the exact same skills that you need to assess that task, to evaluate how good it is, right? So if you don't actually have those skills in the first place, you can't evaluate yourself accurately, which is exactly what we've been talking about. It's like you need accurate evidence, right? In order to have real confidence.
You know so little that you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Kind of like the beginner's fallacy. A lot of times you start out, you figure out something, you think you know everything about it. I do this all the time. Like get into one little thing. I'm like, oh, I know everything about this. The thing is though, is that once you get trained in this a little bit, or like once you are shown that, you can correct that evidence back to what it was, right? I didn't realize this too, but the story that kicked this whole thing off for them, it happened in Pittsburgh, another Pennsylvania reference here. It was this guy, MacArthur Wheeler. He robbed a couple of banks in Pittsburgh in the mid-90s. It was on camera. He got caught, and the police show him, he's like denying it. The police show him the footage with him on it, and he said, "But I wore the juice." And they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?" The guy rubbed lemon juice on his face, thinking that would hide him from the cameras. Okay. So it's like his incompetence in robbery was only matched by his incompetence in not noticing what he didn't know, basically, like not knowing what he didn't know.
He was so scientifically illiterate, it made him confident.
Yes. He knew so little about this that he was so sure about it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
One of my favorite quotes ever, it comes from Bertrand Russell, and he said, the whole problem with the world is that idiots are so sure of themselves and smart people are so full of doubt. And I always think about that when I come across the Dunning-Kruger.
There's interesting too, there's a medical condition, which is if someone has a brain injury that paralyzes them on one side, sometimes they will not even realize that they're paralyzed. You can ask them, they're like, hey, can you grab that with your left hand when their left hand is paralyzed? And they're like, I just don't really feel like it right now, you know?
That's so weird.
They will convince themselves to that degree. They have an actual medical condition. Well,
yeah.
There's people without medical conditions who can convince themselves of just as many absurdities. Right?
Yeah.
Again, though, what they did find too, in one of the studies that they did, they took all those people who scored really low, like in the bottom 25%, and they retrained them on some logic tasks and then gave them another logic assessment. After that, they were much more accurate in assessing themselves. It's a really simple fix.
To bring this back to the attribution piece that we talked about, to effectively build confidence in your life, you need to be able to accurately attribute the results of your actions to yourself. And if you're just an idiot and don't understand anything, then you're not going to have an accurate attribution. You don't know what actually produced the result. You don't know how much of it you were responsible for, how much was just luck. And because you don't know any of these things, you probably just assume you're awesome and without any basis in reality whatsoever. But then as you build up that knowledge and that understanding of what you're doing, you start realizing all the different variables and factors and all the different ways that you could potentially mess something up or that you could be better. And that actually, in a sense, lowers your sense of confidence, but it makes it more realistic.
Yeah, but it's all in that attribution. Like you misattribute your own ability and then you misattribute the actual assessment of your ability in that. So yeah, there's the mismatch there. You're right. Yeah. It's just kind of funny too. Just one little tidbit in that original Dunning-Kruger study. They ended it with a little joke that said, this article may contain faulty logic, methodological errors, or poor communication. Let us assure our readers that to the extent this article is imperfect, it is not a sin we have committed knowingly. So they just came out and said, maybe we did the same thing.
Very ironic.
Yeah. Which I thought was kind of funny. So yeah.
Stay right there. More solved coming up after this. This episode is brought to you by Factor. Confidence is hard to fake, especially when you feel like garbage. You skip lunch, you run on coffee, you get bad sleep, and everything starts feeling heavier than it actually is. How you eat quietly shapes how you feel. And let's be honest, healthy options are hard. Factor takes all of those decisions off the table. Meals are designed by dietitians, they're made by chefs, and they are delivered directly to your door, ready in 2 minutes. Now, I've been living off the mustard dill salmon quinoa bowl because I'm just that type of guy. It tastes like something I would actually order at a restaurant, not just diet food, and it fits how I'm eating at the moment.